You can be in.
Hello, this is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. Happy New Year. First show of the new year. Hope you guys had a amazing holiday. I mean, we've talked after Christmas, so hopefully you guys had if you weren't part of the show last week, hopefully you guys had a nice Christmas and a safe and happy new year. I spent my New Year's Eve at church. We had our Sunday service and then we had a watch night service is what we call them. So I don't think I've ever had a not watch night service. I got some invites to like some political stuff like ringing the new year, but I'm like, nope, I always go to watch night service. So we had a great service, and the New Year's Day I just pretty much was chilling. So I'm refreshed and ready for the new year. And so interesting things have continued to happen throughout the bit of the Christmas break. Tucker Carlson made some remarks about Ben Shapiro that were pretty radical, and I did totally watch Ben's shows today to see if he said anything about it. Not a peep, at least not in front of the paywall. I don't know if he said anything behind the paywall today about it, but he didn't tease that he did. So we'll be talking about that. But something that was pretty interesting is the debate that Seth Macfarlane had, and it was just a conversation. It was like Bill Maher has his show where he invites people on YouTube and they talk and they sit like on these chairs and maybe smoke cigars or something and talk about different stuff. So Candace was on a show, other people have been on a show. So he had Seth Macfarlane and they got to a pretty interesting conversation about the jab. And so both of them said some things that were true and some things that were not true. But I wanted to talk about their segment, particularly regarding to the jab and people getting them and the need for them, and particularly in children and et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of people have talked about it. So I want to weigh in. Also, the border is still terrible. So there's that. And breaking news, the president of Harvard is resigning. She went before Congress and had a terrible hearing. And people try to downplay it. SNL tried to do like a skit where they would making fun of Republicans rather than acknowledging that they had pretty much an egregious opinion and policies toward anti-Semitism. So she didn't resign for that. She didn't get busted for that, really. I mean, people talked about her, but she was going to stay. People, were keeping her, though there's alumni and donors and other people who were very upset. But she got busted on some major plagiarism stuff. So eventually so much happened that she had to go ahead and resign. So that's what we will be talking about today on today's show. So anyway, before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It does cost a stream, run my website, all that stuff, so you guys can support it that way. I do very much appreciate it. There's different things that I like to be able to cover all at once. If I could get some help with that, again, I'd appreciate that. You guys can look at different merch that we have at the store as well. We have different mugs and t-shirts, and this lady from church, Sister Jenny, she got one of my shirts. I had wore it to church. And so people are like, "Oh my gosh, your shirt's really cool." So she went ahead and ordered it. So I saw her wearing it last Friday. So it was a warm, fuzzy feeling. See people wear something that you designed. So anyway, there's different stuff you guys can get at the website that does also support it as well. And you guys can check out different books that I've written. So I did put out an email this morning, which is kind of an overview. Last year we went to March for Life. I released my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, and that was a huge labor of love to put out there. And I really see that there's a need for it. The more I debate and talk about this topic, I definitely see a need for it. And you can say, well, why do you bring up religion? They bring it up anyway. You might as well know how to defend your sense of morality and explain why it's better. Everybody debates their beliefs. They do. But I was sick of people saying about for life starts with first breath and Numbers 11. God killed his kid. Why can't you? All kinds of crazy stuff. So I decided to just go ahead and tackle that. So we put that out. Had different interviews on the radio, did different debates, interview cool people like Riley Gaines, and had people like the Savion and other folks. So at the end of the year, my artist for the book cover of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, that's my baby sister. She had an art showcase. Sorry, that's the wrong thing. And and she did such a great job on the cover, so and a great job with her showcase. So I was so proud of her for that. So you just really had a fulfilling great new year. I went to Motor City twice, and that has nothing to do with this, but I did sell books there. So I just had a pretty full year, and I am appreciative of you guys being on that journey with me. I did want to quickly mention some of my top articles from last year. Number 5, and then I put this in the email that went out today, was an article not even from 2023, but from 2022. It was What to the Unborn is the 4th of July. So it looks at the speech from Frederick Douglass to what is to what to the slave is the 4th of July, and it just compares that battle to the modern battle today and the need of abolition there. No, they're not the same things, but there's so many parallels to those two fights. So that was the 5th most popular. The 4th most popular was an article I wrote about Vivek Ramaswamy, because on their website they tried to debunk that he wasn't for 59% inheritance tax. And I'm not making the argument that that's his policy position, because that would be a crazy policy position to run on. But he did very clearly mention in his book, Nation of Victims, that he thought a 59% inheritance tax was a moral duty. And I find that kind of weird for a libertarian type of candidate. So I wrote an article just detailing that and his explanation for it, with quotes from his book, and why I find that position to actually be an immoral position. So that was available. Number 3 was actually an article about the Nefarious movie. And I really did enjoy that film. It was I didn't see a ton of movies last year, but it was one of my favorite ones that I saw. I think I mostly enjoyed pretty much everything that I saw. I don't love going to the movies. Not that I don't like movies. It's just I'm not as passionate about movies as I guess I used to be, but I'd rather be at home working on a video or writing a book or something. So to just get up and go to the movie theater, um, I have to be kind of motivated to go see it. Um, I saw a lot of people on TikTok posting clips from the Nefarious film, and it seemed interesting. And then I saw so many like people on the left, different critics who like despise the film, and it just kind of made me want to go see it. So I saw it, and I thought it was quite good. I know Steve D said that who wrote the book for it, teased that they were going to have more nefarious content. I don't know how long they can beat that horse. But maybe a sequel will be great, maybe won't be great. They'd have to, in my opinion, probably have a new character who's the main character. That's they could always have a different demon in a different circumstance or whatever that they focus on. But I don't know what they do for a sequel, but for the film itself, it was good. And it was interesting seeing what the left was so triggered by. The second most popular article, I'm not surprised. Uh, it could be number one. I mean, it's not number one, but I wouldn't have been surprised if it was number one. It's the article I had that cis is a slur. Yes, cis is a slur. Like cisgender, if you're like, what the heck is cisgender? Cis is what they call someone who is, well, they assume that I'd be a cis woman because I am a biological woman and I identify as a woman is what they would say. So that would mean that my gender correlates with my biological sex. So I don't say cis because I don't identify as a woman. I am a woman. I don't buy into the ideology. So the word cis, I argued, is a slur, and people get offended when you say that on their side. They are like, no, it's just an accurate way to refer to you as. It's like, no, you're using that term to undermine it, to undermine biological sex. And the reason why they separate sex and gender isn't because they actually think they should be separate. It's to undermine them. So anyway, go check out that article. On the website and share it. It's pretty good. And the last article that I wrote that was number one, it was explaining the drama between Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens over the October 7th Israel response and so on from there, because Ben Shapiro had some strong words for Candace, and then Candace responded with some strong words for him. So I looked at many tweets. I'd been following their back and forth for a minute. I remembered that Ben had some words for her before, and they had gotten to it with the Kanye situation, and people have accused her of anti-Semitism in the past. I would say wrongly, smeared her and stuff. But there, so I go through the history of it and explain kind of how it broke down all today. So I don't know if I've seen anything that was more comprehensive than what I compiled together. And so after the article, I did make a video about it. So that was the number one, which I guess people like their drama. So um so anyway, those are the top 5 articles. And you can find that list on, I guess, from the email that went out. It posted on social media on Facebook and um Twitter. I think I'll post the list on my YouTube community page as well. A lot of people do go and read my articles from YouTube. The YouTube like community thing has been really, really good. At least for me anyway. At least for me, as far as like engagement, people interacting and commenting and stuff. Some other sites have been like Facebook has been like choking me a lot. But they flagged me for um debunking like Hamas propaganda like last week, and they're like, you can't promote terrorists. I'm like, that is literally not what I'm doing. And they did give me a chance to repeal it. Like they let you go through a process to be like, well, I disagree with this, and you click continue and you read the stuff, continue, and then to when it got to the point of like trying to like, I don't know, try to get them to be like, hey, I agree with this and this is why, the continue button was just like blocked out, so I couldn't do anything about it. So I think that's just like a ding against my account. I don't know how to really connect with anybody from Facebook, so it's really frustrating, really frustrating. But anyway, let's get to the actual like content of the day. Thank you for um your patience. I do have something funny to share with you. A lot of people are sharing Joe Biden's video from his interview with Ryan Seacrest New Year's Eve, and they asked him what was his favorite memory, and he like kind of stumbled all over himself. I didn't think like, you know, it wasn't great, but I could kind of understand what he's saying. It was more like sensible than like a Kamala Harris answer, you know? So I thought about showing that, but I opted not to. I'm gonna show something else though. Someone did a pretty great impression of of Biden, and and I always think it's great when people do good impressions of Democrats, because it seems like they don't want to nail them, because I don't know, maybe they like them too much to really make fun of them. But this is a good impression of Biden.
In America have to resolve to be, and the new year is going to bring for all. It doesn't matter if you're a North American, a South American. The point, look, not a joke. We have to resolve to remember to. Never mind.
That was a nail on the head right there. The trying so hard, and then just tiring out and needing the nap with the never mind. Like maybe it was important, but it's over now. I don't have the mental capacity to keep going. So yeah, that was a pretty good Biden impression, and there's some good really good Trump impersonators on TikTok. Not a lot of great parody ones like on SNL and other places. I don't know. It kind of seems like and maybe they hate him too much to like accurately kind of parody him too. But anyway, let's very quickly talk about this Claudine Gay situation, and then we will move on to the Seth and the Bill Maher situation. So Claudine Gay, president of Harvard, who is resigning. I don't know if it's like official yet, but she put out a resignation letter. There's been lots of disturbance with these higher learning educational places, these Ivy League schools, regarding attitudes towards Israel, anti-Semitism, etc. And so we know, like right out the gate, Harvard had some issues. There was different groups of Harvard's, different groups at Harvard that came together and wrote a letter saying that they basically condemn Israel, and it's not they're solely responsible for what happened after October the 7th. Now, granted, some of the more gruesome stories that we're aware of, and maybe scenes that we're aware of, perhaps they weren't totally aware of at that time, but there was enough. There was enough to at least not have written that letter and have those groups sign on to it. And so that caused a huge controversy. There was different people who said we need to like basically insinuated at least that they needed to blackmail these students. There was like a mobile truck that was driving around with their names on it. And there was just all kinds of tension and stuff that was breaking out. So a different presidents ended up at Congress, and they asked like, is a call to genocide of the Jews like against your code of conduct? And the answers were like, well, it depends on the context. And so it was a pretty remarkable exchange. Some, folks try to cover for them, like SNL. I think most people was like, that's not a good look. SNL tried to like make fun of the Republicans though and clean it up in that kind of way. You had one president, not from Harvard, but another university, who resigned the next day, but she's a white woman. So, easier to get rid of someone like her than a diversity hire. And if you say, oh, that's really rude to call someone a diversity hire like Claudine Gay, it kind of seems pretty evident that that's why she's had her job for so long after the scandal broke out, and perhaps why she got it at all. So she didn't get, pressured to resign to the point where she felt like she had to, because of the anti-Semitism stuff. But all this information came out about her plagiarizing different people's works, including other Black women. So she was doing something that would get other students expelled. So if you're the president of Harvard and it comes out that you plagiarized a bunch of work, that's not a good look. And so Harvard was already looking kind of sus, and their reputation is being dragged through the mud. And the president is someone who's plagiarized a bunch of things. So there was a couple stories that broke out about it. Then, other institutions, like even the New York Times was writing about it. And then there was a dump of more stuff that she plagiarized, I think maybe yesterday. So today she finally came out and decided to resign. And so there's already people saying that, oh, the new president needs to be Black. And isn't that why you have situations like this right now because people are so gung-ho about race rather than who's the best qualified. And people are looking back and saying, well, how did she even rise to this level to become the president of Harvard? She hasn't written a book, and she's written like 11 journal entries in the past like 26 years. And apparently much of her work is like plagiarized. So people are questioning, how does she even rise to this particular level? Well, a lot of people, will fail upwards in certain circumstances, but diversity, equity, inclusion is probably the answer, and is probably why she's where she is, and has been still in this position for so long. But it's too much, and now they have to let her go. It's funny that CNN tried to kind of run cover for her a bit.
These plagiarism allegations, where Claudine Gay has had to issue corrections, multiple corrections. Now, we should note that Claudine Gay has not been accused of stealing anyone's ideas in any of her writings. She's been accused of sort of more like copying other people's writings without attribution. So it's been more sloppy attribution than stealing anyone's ideas. But nonetheless, you put all of that together.
Okay, so if you are a student from Harvard and you're writing some stuff and you're taking someone else's ideas, not stealing them, you're just using them, and people are assuming that they're yours, and you're not giving any kind of attribution, aware that you got it from somewhere, how is that not plagiarizing? How is that not plagiarizing? So yeah, she's been accused of plagiarism, and that's why she is stepping down. It's not sloppy like accreditation to different sources. That is so silly. So different people like Mark Lamont Hill are saying the next president must be Black. And Ibrahim X. Kendi had some lines about racism, etc., blah, 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 which Claudine Gay pointed to racism and stuff, didn't take any accountability really for her actions either. We can very quickly read her letter. But he said the next president of Harvard University must be a Black woman. So someone put Condoleezza Rice there. So I'm sure they would not like that. Ibrahim X. Kendi said, racist mobs won't stop until they topple all Black people from positions of power and influence who are not reinforcing the structure of racism. What these racist mobs are doing should be obvious to any reporter who cares about the truth or justice, as opposed to conflicts and cliques. She plagiarized the work, bro. Like, she didn't do a good thing. She did something that was worthy of her getting the boot. Period. If you want everyone to treat you, if you really want to get rid of racism, just act like people are equal. And if there was another person and they were white and they were the head of Harvard or something, and they got caught with a huge plagiarism scandal, would you not be like, okay, we need to get rid of them? I think most people would react that way. Your resistance to her being fired is because she's Black. It's because they're racist. The people who went after her initially is because she made missteps, and she's woke and has not really condemned anti-Semitism appropriately, and has pushed sort of racial identity kind of stuff. And she's basically the product of the ideology. And the funny thing about his statement, he said racist mobs won't stop until they topple all Black people from positions of power and influence who are not reinforcing the structure of racism. That it's true. It's true. But he's a part of a system that reinforces racism. And that's why people on the left try to uplift jokers like these and try to get rid of like people like Clarence Thomas, because they don't like people who won't reinforce, a racist sort of perspective. That's why people like to lift up Ida, I think it's Ida B. Wells, who's a 1619 Project, and they like to tear down or ignore Thomas Sowell or whatever. So someone in response quote tweeted him and said, beware of people who tell you to beware of people. that's the kind of wisdom that he puts out there to the world. So, no, ignore jokers like these. Like, just get someone who's the best person for the job. Now, Chris Rufo, he's the one who's mostly responsible for this, I would say, exposing all this. He said, to all of my critics who snidely dismissed me as a bad faith actor and a cartoon villain, I was right. You were wrong. Gay is gone. The world of politics cannot be divided neatly between good actors and bad actors. Reality is not a Marvel movie. Politics is not a child's fable. There are only actors, fighters in the arena, some of whom are successful and some whom are not. My strategies, however unorthodox, have proven successful at exposing corruption, changing public opinion, and moving institutions. My critics, nursing sanctimonious feelings from a safe distance outside of the arena, have no such record. Call me a bad actor, call me a cartoon villain. I will measure myself by virtue and virtue alone. So he's patting himself on the back today, but he did accomplish something pretty monumental, and it's not because she wasn't deserving of getting fired. It's not because she wasn't targeted because she was black. I would argue people wanted to hold on to her because she's black and uplifted her probably to that position because she's black, because she didn't really have a resume that justified her tenure, her position. So she's gone, or she's resigning. Let me go through her resignation, or at least point out a little bit of the stuff that she said, because she totally didn't really take accountability and still pointed to racism, like her critics being racist, and that's woe is me. No accountability. That's what's worst about people or whatever. And I argued, like, what is one of the worst things about the Harvard letter of the different groups that signed on blaming Israel over Hamas and stuff. You can not like stuff that Israel's done or whatever, but Hamas is responsible for what Hamas decided to do. And people who misassign blame are some of the worst people who could be employees and so on. So people who can't take accountability and want to point the finger elsewhere, that's not a good sign. She said, dear members of the Harvard community, it is with a heavy heart but a deep love for Harvard that I write to share that I will be stepping down as president. This is not a decision I came to easily. Indeed, it has been difficult beyond words, because I have looked forward to working with so many of you to advocate the commitment to academic excellence that has propelled this great university across centuries. But after consultation with members of the corporation, it has become clear that it is in the best interest of Harvard for me to resign so that our community can navigate this moment of extraordinary challenge with a focus on the institution rather than any individual, which, by the way, she has like the shortest tenure from what I'm reading. It is a singular honor to be a member of this university, which has been my home and my inspiration for most of my professional career. My deep sense of connection to Harvard and its people has made it all the more painful to witness the tensions and divisions that have riven our community in recent months, weakening the bonds of trust and reciprocity that should be our sources of strength and support in times of crisis. And amidst all of this, it has been distressing to have doubt cast on my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, two bedrock virtues that are fundamental to who I am, which apparently can't be too fundamental to who you are, because you did all the plagiarism stuff, and frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus. What's your evidence that it's racial animus? Of course, these people hate DEI, but just because people dislike DEI doesn't mean that they are racist. It could just be that they want an equal playing field, they want merit, and they don't. I mean, if you're fueled by DEI, then you have a racially skewed like sense of right and wrong, I suppose. I believe in the people of Harvard because I see in you the possibility and promise of a better future. These last few weeks have helped make clear the work we need to do to build that future, to combat bias and hate in all its forms, to create a learning environment in which we respect each other's dignity and treat one another with compassion. And to affirm our enduring commitment to open inquiry and free expression in the pursuit of truth. I believe we have within all of us that we need to heal from the period of tension and division and to emerge stronger. I had hoped with all my heart to lead us on that journey in partnership with all of you. As of now, I return to the facility, to the faculty, and to the scholarship and teaching that are the lifeblood of what we do. I pledge to continue working alongside you to build the community we all deserve. When I became president, I considered myself particularly blessed by the opportunity to serve people from around the world who saw in my presidency a vision of Harvard that affirmed their sense of belonging, their sense that Harvard welcomes people of talent and promise from every background imaginable to learn from and grow with in one another. To all of you, please know that those doors remain open and Harvard will be stronger and better because they do. To me, that kind of seems like, I'm going to read into this a bit, but I don't see how another way to read this, but like people who look like her being in this position, people could look, like Harvard opens the door to other minorities and stuff. And she's saying those doors are still open to these people, different backgrounds. But what she did to advance in her career is a stain upon people who work very hard and maybe have all these obstacles thrown up against them, whether it be for economics or race or whatever, and they still persevere and they still keep their integrity and they still do the right thing. So she's no role model here. As we welcome a new year and a new semester, I hope we can all look forward to brighter days. Sad as I am to be sending this message, my hopes for Harvard remain undimmed. When my brief presidency is remembered, I hope it will be seen as a moment of reawakening to the importance of striving to find our common humanity and not allowing a rancor of retribution to undermine the vital process of education. I trust we will find ways in this time intense challenge and controversy to recommit ourselves to the excellence, the openness, and the independence that are crucial to what our university stands for and to our capacity to serve the world. So no, I apologize for being a fraud or anything like that or stealing this work, etc. Blah, blah, blah. But you guys are, people target me because they're racist. So really no accountability there, but is what it is. Anyway, let's move on. So Bill Maher and Seth Macfarlane, who did like Family Guy and other stuff, sat down at for one of Bill Maher's, I can't remember what the show is, but different people come in. It's like a YouTube show and they'll talk about different politics. It's way more laid back or whatever. Sometimes you watch Bill Maher and it's kind of more adversarial, but this doesn't seem to be that. But anyway, they got into it about COVID, and Bill said some things that he's not. Seth says some true things, but I don't get his perspective at all, really. And I think so many things about the pandemic really exposed so many issues with the left and their worldview, and how there's really no real consistency there. And I'll get to what I mean. But let me go ahead and pull this video up. And we're not going to watch the whole thing, I don't think. At least this whole segment, at least, is about 6 minutes long.
Doctors wrong about so much.
Well, they're right about a lot too.
But very often people who aren't doctors have been righter about things.
Like what would be an example of that?
I would think this country did not allow for natural immunity to be considered. And I know this is a subject dear to your heart.
Yes.
Like even if you had the disease, you still had to get a vaccine. That's powerful, stupid. They don't do that in Europe.
I think they do that here. There's mandatory vaccination in schools.
Right, but if you already had the disease, you have natural immunity. We didn't seem to believe in that.
That was
here.
debunked, though. I mean, that's
not debunked.
Don't you know people who've had COVID 4 or 5 times? I do. That's not natural immunity. There's no immunity there. You've had COVID 5 times.
Probably because you had too many vaccines. I didn't have COVID.
Did the vaccine gave you COVID?
Well, that's certainly nothing unscientific about the fact that the vaccine, which does weaken you in order to strengthen you.
So as do all vaccines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But while you're in a weakened state, yes, that's why so many people like me got it did not have it while the thing was raging, and I was taking zero precautions because I was never that afraid of it.
But that's anecdotal. Like, I've had
yeah,
every
but,
booster
but
there is to
anecdotal
have,
that, yeah.
and I have never had COVID. I get a flu shot once a year. I haven't had the flu in 20 years.
Right. Well, I haven't either. I don't get a flu shot.
So yeah, that's anecdote. I mean, they're going back for anecdotal stuff, which with Seth will mention there. I've never had a flu shot, and I've never had the flu. My sister, who had she got a flu shot one year, maybe it was about 2 years ago, and she like got the flu after that. And so and that's anecdotal too. Every booster known to man, really. Wow. I haven't had any jabs, and I haven't had COVID, at least to my knowledge either. People who getting the jab doesn't mean that you won't contract COVID. I know people who were kind of forced to get it, particularly by or pressured. Well, people pressured by their jobs or whatever, but family members and stuff like, hey, you need to get this, etc. And they got it, had bad reactions to it, and had COVID like at least more than once. So, did things to their bodies, etc. Kind of regret it, but they, is what it is. But if you did get it, maybe your natural immunity hasn't stopped you from contracting it again, just like the jab won't stop you from contracting it. But as far as like you getting it and it's I don't know, as deadly as it could have been the first time around or something, like when it was a more powerful strain, it's you're gonna be protected by those different antibodies or whatever is in your system. So I think I don't know, is talking past each other kind of fair, or not all of them quite having all the facts? I don't know, but that's not really the interesting part that I really wanted to get to. So let's keep watching.
Okay, so this is all anecdotal,
Right.
but you know the difference between anecdotal and statistical.
I do.
And statistically, you still have a 90% better chance of not being hospitalized, not dying if you're vaccinated.
Okay, but that's assuming all people are alike, and that is one of the giant fallacies in your way of thinking. We are not all alike. Yes, I would recommend and have recommended the COVID vaccine for the high-risk people. Like if you're 90 or fat, get it. Absolutely, you need it. Some people don't.
But you had
Djokovic didn't need it.
But you had
Aaron Rodgers didn't need it.
But you had something like 1,900 kids who died of COVID during.
No. So the kids part is a what I want to get to, but yeah, there are people who like once it was made clear, and they said it very early that you could still catch it after getting the jab. It seemed like there was like a second wave of that information, like, I don't know, a year later or something, where perhaps when they admitted when the number of prevention was like lower than 95% or whatever, and they said it was I don't know, I don't remember what the numbers are, but whenever it became apparent to people that getting the jab won't stop you from spreading it to someone else, the narratives about you're killing grandma needed to go out the window. If people wanted to take it to help themselves and to prevent having the chance of catching it and having a harsh reaction to it and needing to be hospitalized or die or something like that, like that's on you. But this whole idea of you have to take it to save someone else, or I'm taking it and I took it for you and I'm so righteous and virtuous because I took it to save your life. I didn't ask you to. And you getting it doesn't actually make me less sick. I have to get it myself or whatever. So that self-righteousness that people had, there was no basis in it. And there's a lot of commentary. I've seen people retweeting this who are on Seth's side, like, oh, he took out Maher, the stupid stuff that he's saying. And people are trying to rewrite history and do revisionist history, etc., blah, blah, blah. And bro, we can't forget, and we should not forget, I guess they're trying to make us forget, that the narrative was you have to get the jab or you're killing your grandma. That was the narrative. you're killing people. You have to get it. How dare you not get it? You're killing people. So if the jab doesn't actually stop you from getting someone else sick, that blows a hole through that, straight through it. But let's move on.
No,
Pandemic.
I don't think that's right. The New
How
York,
many of them died from the vaccine? None.
the New York,
And then
Okay, so he mentioned that there were 1,900 kids who died from the jab, from COVID, and nobody died from the jab. That's what he just said. Now Bill Maher said he didn't think that was true. It's pretty much true. The numbers are about 1,900, but we're talking about like the entire pandemic. That's relative to pretty much flu numbers. I went to the CDC the other day to look it up. I don't have it pulled up on my computer, but let me look at it really quick. So children under 1 years old, 519 deaths, and a 0 through 17 was 1,696. And again, that's like from January 1st, 2020 to September of this year, of past year, I guess. So yeah, the number's about 19. So pneumonia though, for under 1 year was over 1,000, and for pneumonia for 0 to 17 was almost 3,000. So pneumonia for that age group, it has more casualties than the vid. And with COVID, and I'm talking CDC stuff, so like to the internet moderators out there, I'm saying CDC stuff. It says they didn't say with COVID, but it said like involved with COVID, deaths involving COVID. So we assume, and I think it's a safe assumption, that these children who died with COVID and perhaps had other comorbidities that made them vulnerable. But most of these numbers of people dying from COVID are in upper categories of like the biggest numbers are obviously like 85 and up, with over 300,000 deaths, or 75 to 84 is over 300,000, 65 to 74 256,000, etc. 55 to 64 159,000. 50 to 64 is more than 50 that other age groups. I don't know what's going on there, but that's 200,000. Maybe this is just a bigger population of people. So the older you get and the more comorbidities you have, the more in danger you would be to it, right? If someone was like, Christina, you're a really big gal, you should probably consider taking it. That would have been a fair kind of suggestion. But I'm like, but I don't know what will happen exactly if I do take it. So I was like, I'm going to take the risk, right? I have heard of other people from my age group dying from COVID who were my size or perhaps bigger, catching it and dying. Like your physical health was a really important thing. But I know people who were bigger and were pretty motivated from the pandemic to say, I have to get my body in order and slim down. Even people who had the vaccine, like I ran out to get this. This is savvy, I guess. People are like, go get this. And then she was kind of taken aback after she had done it. She's like, I put something in my body and I didn't even research it. And she just was like, let me get my life together. But so she went on this health kick and she, lost a lot of weight. So it is crazy to me that there wasn't like a mass shaming of people to do exercise and so on. And you can see, well, those are long-term solutions. We were in the pandemic for years. So they should have had Michelle Obama back on TV doing those exercise, things that she did as a first lady, or some other people or whatever, instead of having celebrities get together and singing Imagine, they should have been like singing Get Up, Get Up, Get Up. Go exercise or something. But there wasn't any sort of pressure to do anything other than to take the jab. That's where the pressure was. And it was very questionable. So overall, he is correct that there we're about 2,000 deaths. So Bill was wrong on that. But he did mention like it could be like with COVID though, and these numbers from the CDC, they do say involving COVID. So again, I assume there's different comorbidities there, but Seth made the claim that no one died as a result of the jab. I know people who I don't know anyone who has personally passed away from it. I know people who had some pretty darn remarkable complications from it and nearly died. But I want to play this video here of this father. I've played it before, but this father got the jab for his son, and his son is no longer here.
I was a father of a 16-year-old son, a single parent. I raised my boy since he was a baby. He meant the world to me. I got the vaccine to protect my son. And after in March, April, they're announcing how it was safe for teenagers. Me and my son have never been apart. We're always together. He was my best friend. I always told him it was me and you against the world. He joined ROTC in high school. He was always full of smiles. Anybody that knew my son would see he was happy. I wasn't rich, but I gave him everything he wanted. We didn't lack for anything. We used to go fishing, camping, do everything. We got the Pfizer vaccine because I thought it was to protect him. I thought it was the right thing to do. It was like playing Russian roulette. My government lied to me. They said it was safe. Next week is his birthday. You know where I'm going to celebrate his birthday at? While everybody, once we leave here, they're going to forget about what we're doing or what they talk about, what we said here. They're going to be enjoying time with their family and kids. Thanksgiving, I'm going to spend at the cemetery. Christmas at that cemetery. They need to quit pushing this on their children. I lost mine. Y'all need to protect yours. They're trying to target the 5 to 12-year-olds. We're going to have more deaths in our hands than they plan. And they say it's worth the risk. It wasn't worth the risk.
Wasn't worth the risk is how he ended it. And he went around like trying to travel to talk about it. And this was like early on. So this was in the age of like censorship, shut everyone down as much as possible. So he tried to do like a GoFundMe to travel around and talk about this. GoFundMe took it down, said it was a prohibited conduct. And he lost the donations he had received thus far. And 2 months after that, Twitter took down a photograph of him by his son's casket that read "My goodbyes to my baby boy," followed by like 3 heartbroken emojis. And they took that down. How you gonna take down a father grieving over his child? So they tried to censor this man after all that happened. So I guess you could say it was a coincidence if you want to, but he was fine. He got it, and then his child was no longer with him. So he said it wasn't worth the risk. And it was a risk. Like you weigh your pros and your cons. Like there's been a lot of talk about Ben Shapiro and his like response to during the pandemic and stuff, which he said some stuff that was really annoying that I definitely was outspoken about. And actually I have an article because Ben is like, if I'm wrong, like tell me or something, and like I'll admit when I'm wrong. I have an article that lays it. I'm like, here's my submission for when you were wrong, talking about some of the stuff he said during the pandemic. But when he was on the kick of like trying to get people to have it, he said he would, lay out their wrists for it and like he was like evangelizing it, trying to get people to get it and stuff. And then but then I think he said once he basically could get it, and once his parents and stuff were vaccinated, he didn't care as much because he just wanted to make sure that his family was protected, and then what you do is on you. And then it just kind of, the narrative collapsed when it was like, oh, you're still spreading it, you're still catching it. And then it kind of seemed like the veil was torn. He was a little betrayed, and we're like, bro, it's the government, what did you expect? People lying to you. So anyway, yeah, you can weigh your pros and your cons, but if you're young and you're in shape and you just didn't have the same kind of risk factors compared to like someone who's maybe very up in age, or maybe like in the mid part of their life, but they're heavier set, etc. So he said it wasn't worth it. So Seth's claiming that no one died. That's cap. So I just needed to at least present that, make him aware of that. Well, you'll probably never see this video, but if someone out there knows him or whatever, they can at least say like, hey, there are people who have been wounded, at least, who have been, well, I would argue there are people who have passed away, but there have definitely been people who've been harmed from it. Do you guys recall seeing commercials and so much talk about myocarditis prior to the pandemic? It's like a national conversation, and you could say like, well, people are catching that from getting it itself. I would say that people are, you see an issue with people getting that after also getting the jab as well. So once it was like not about you killing your grandma, it should have been like, people need the freedom to decide whether or not they're going to get the jab or not get the jab. They're going to risk catching it naturally and then fighting through it, or it purposely injecting themselves with something that could harm them. Because there's a difference. So this conversation goes on some more about the kids and basically why it was worth the sort of tyrannical nature of the pandemic for these like 1,900 kids who died.
And the thinking there is that, well, probably most kids are not going to die from COVID, so why bother with the vaccine? Because it's only going to be a few hundred kids, right?
I don't know how many kids died. That seems very high to me. I know at one point the New York Times grossly, talking about misinformation, they had to apologize. They got it completely wrong. She reported something like 900,000 children have been hospitalized, and it was like 63,000. So maybe those facts should be checked.
Papers can get it wrong, and they print retractions, and you know this.
But also, with COVID or from COVID, did 1,900 children die with COVID? Yes, it's a whole different story.
Okay, but take 7 million people worldwide. 7 million people worldwide who died from COVID. Like, if even just a fraction of that is, and it's probably a larger fraction who died of COVID than who died with COVID. If even just a fraction of that is, that's still a lot of fucking people. That's a lot of fucking people.
Yes, but what? Okay,
that's
some people,
7 million people.
Things are, and you cannot prevent that.
You can though. I mean, you can prevent.
At what cost?
But what's the cost of getting a vaccine? What's
the fact that you don't even have a clue what's the cost of getting a vaccine, that you don't know the answer to that? No, you completely want to shut your eyes to the fact that there are repercussions to all medical interventions, including a vaccine. All vaccines, they say side effects just like every medication does. Sure. You can see it in the literature. They can't write it on the back, on the vaccine, so you have to dig them. And of course there is a vaccine court because so many people have been injured. This is not a screed to say don't do vaccines. I'm not against doing vaccines. I'm against doing vaccines that I don't think I need. I should be able to decide that for myself inside my body. But yes, there are pathogens
don't you think that
would come along that I would fight you for.
But don't you think?
So I just want to interject right here before we get to my larger point. But I have a friend who's really some mutual on TikTok, and I've had him on before to talk about his experience with the medical system. He's from Canada. And so he was allergic to like every single freaking thing that was in the vaccine, like everything. But doctors would not give exemptions, and they were requiring medical people to get the jab. And I don't know what kind of orders they had, but they were very, very, very against getting it. So when he got his test to see if he was allergic to the stuff, and he tested for like everything that was in there, and he's like, okay, so I'm going to get an exemption. They're like, nope, we're just going to inject you with like it very, very slowly with like different IVs and stuff to like fight off your allergic reaction at the same time we're injecting you with the jab. So he was very frustrated about all that, and he eventually had to do it. He has a pretty nice job that he's worked hard for, but people shouldn't have been in that position, especially like in freaking Canada. So many people like voluntarily got the jab. At one point, with people getting naturally infected and people getting the jab, do you reach some kind of herd immunity and stuff? So making people who were deeply allergic to stuff have to go through it, that was pretty insane to me. There have been people that I heard a case about a guy who lost his leg after, because he had some kind of clot and stuff. I know someone who had a heart attack after getting the jab because they had, a reaction to it. So there's different side effects, sure. And going through the injury court and stuff, that's something that we like pay for, by the way, if someone actually can prove that. But it's not an easy process. It's not an easy process at all. So there are different risks. And so people, again, once it was clear that it wasn't like I have to get this to save your grandma situation, people needed to have the freedom to say, I'm going to get this for myself, instead of like being naturally contracting this in the wild versus having to choose to inject something inside of me that may cause me harm. There's a big difference. There's a big moral difference between the two. And Seth is just like, well, think about all these people who could have died. And how many people could you legitimately stop from passing away, especially if these numbers are largely conflated with COVID rather than from COVID. My grandma technically passed away, I guess, from COVID. She was also 102 years old. So, interesting opinions here, but these at least the conversations going on, because a lot of people don't even bother to have these conversations. But it's interesting to see some people like, yeah, Seth is just killing it, and these people, and they're kind of rewriting history as if the narrative wasn't, you have to get it to, we're going to kill your grandma. So there's a larger conversation about our freedoms and our liberties that were also infringed on top of that. People were saying like, don't give people medical care, if they go into an emergency room and they don't have the jab, even though they technically paid for the jab themselves with their tax dollars and all that stuff too. But don't treat them because they should have gotten people were insane and took it as a liberty to be as mean and cruel to people as possible. And then people had to worry about losing their jobs, going to restaurants, etc. Blah blah blah. I know people who broke down and got the jab because there was nothing that they could do in their city. they were basically a prisoner. So they were pretty much felt like they didn't have a choice. And then there was the OSHA thing with the wanting people to either get the jab or having to them test all the time periodically, which they'd have to probably pay for the test themselves, which isn't fun when people like dig into your nose or whatever to collect that sample up there to see, if you got it or not. And that was to break people's will and to make them get it. And it didn't take into account like if people had gotten it before. It didn't really take into account the fact that you can still spread it even though you have it. So it was really about enforcing people to get this, and it didn't follow the science. It didn't follow the science at all. At one point, it was just about agenda and abandoning it all.
get the vaccine.
Okay, but that's a good point.
To get the vaccine.
And you bring me to my next point. Don't you think that the vitriol and the aggression towards that the anti-vaccination movement, the way it souped itself up during all this, that the next time there is a pandemic, our public health system is so weakened.
Yes,
it's
exactly,
so weakened.
because of them and their fucking misinformation that made people skeptical. The fact that everybody came out and said, if you get the vaccine, you.
Seth is lying there. Lying or delusional. It's one or the other. I guess we shouldn't attribute the malice. We should just assume delusional out the gate. But the vaccine first came out under the Trump administration. He was pushing it, and you had people on the left who were undermining it. Like, oh, I'm not taking Trump's vaccine. Oh, it came out too quick, because they didn't want people to feel like any sort of relief where they could go get the jab and they were safe, because that would have happened before the election. They wanted people to feel like there was no hope and it was Trump's fault. and he was just, there was incompetence just abound the whole entire time. And that's why they needed new leadership or whatever. So people saying that was Trump undermining it. Trump he brags about the vaccine. He's like the father of the vax, and he pretends like no one was harmed from it at all or whatever. He's like totally for it, whatever. So people saying, oh, it was Trump with the, no, it wasn't. It was the left. It was Kamala Harris and other people who were like, I don't know about that, who are undermining the vax. And that same vaccine, Biden turned around and just was like, you got to take this or you're going to lose your job. So that's cap, major cap right there from Seth.
You cannot get the disease, and then of course that was wrong. And if you get the vaccine, you can't transmit it.
But
and
they were
that
learning right alongside us.
I understand.
They're not. You just said yourself, doctors are often wrong. They are, especially when they're researching a brand new disease.
And I am not blaming them for it. I'm just saying that's why there shouldn't be the science. There's no the in science. That's what you want. You want just to be the one true opinion.
No. That's not true at all.
It is.
No, the strength of science. The strength of science is that it has the capacity to evolve and
just acknowledge that vaccines have ill effects on some people.
They do. Of course they
anecdotally.
Do. But statistically, it's here and it's here. It's like it's people. How many? 7 million people died of COVID. How many people died from the vaccine? Probably a few.
But
I don't know what the number is, but I know it's not 7 million.
If we were more judicious about who needed it versus who it might hurt, which would not be the blanket policy of just everybody, one size fits all, then perhaps we could take down the damages from the vaccine that happened.
But then why vaccinate for anything?
And then take down the...
Why vaccinate for measles? Why not? Why vaccinate for mumps or rubella, pertussis? Why vaccinate for any of those things? Because somebody might get hurt by the vaccine. I mean, why do those vaccines? Because COVID is newer?
Well, COVID is newer.
Yes, but is that the only reason? I mean, this was, by the time you got the vaccine, I don't know if you had it, but by the time I got the vaccine, this was the most tested vaccine in the history of vaccination.
Yes, I had it.
Because
I had to
so many people by that point had it. It's like by the time it got into my arm, it's like, all right, I think I'm going to be okay.
Okay, well, just so you know, I took one for the team. Okay, so you know, that should go into it. I did something I did not want to do, and we don't have to talk about this all night.
So, Bill was forced to take it. He didn't want to take it. And I mean, COVID, there was just a lot of things that they pushed about it that weren't true. Like stuff about women's menstrual cycles and other stuff like that. They eventually had to turn around and say, oh, it does affect it. So there's been a lot of like misinformation, a lot of hidden information, a lot of lies along the way that has damaged the trust of the American people regarding to these sorts of things. If COVID impacted kids like other sort of diseases and stuff, we'd have different conversations. We'd feel like there's a different need, but it's just not there. Again, it's like it's relative to like the flu, to pneumonia and stuff. And by the way, the overlords of social media, that's going by the CDC's numbers. It's going by the CDC's numbers. So anyway, back to Seth. He made a comment about like, oh, just 100 kids will die. And so that justification with like, we have to save, if there's a couple hundred kids who would die, or 2,000 kids who would die from the vid, that justifies the actions that inflicted upon the population as far as limiting their movements and their stuff with their work and their jobs, people losing their jobs, losing their businesses, all sorts of different things, losing the freedom to go to the movies and exercise or the gym and other kind of things like that. Just totally things that didn't ultimately make a lot of sense. Filling skate parks with sand. All kinds of crazy stuff that happened that they kind of ignored once BLM stuff broke out, because then it was okay. It was too important so everyone could go out and protest. So people should have known it was ridiculous then, but people kept pushing it even longer than that anyway. It's worth it because, like, hey, these kids died. And to Bill's point, like, how do we know that would have saved them or not saved them if we had taken different sort of precaution? Like, how do when there's a disease going on, you know, how do you stop it? Besides, you can get people jabbed and stuff, but your jab didn't stop people from spreading it. So that's an issue. But what's interesting to me is how people will say this number, we could lose X amount of lives, therefore we have to forego your liberties. What if I told you there was something else that happened all the time that killed nearly like 1 million children every year? What if I told you that? And I'm talking about the US alone. According to CDC's number, you might get like 600,000, but they don't take all the reporting from all the states like California and other places. So that's a really low estimate. It's more like between like 800,000, 900,000 or something. Right? And I guess could be numbers we're not aware of, but you know, maybe not quite 1 million, but definitely not 600,000. So it's closer to maybe like 900,000, 800, 900,000 in that number. Excuse me. And we're talking about like every year. We'd probably be like, man, that's crazy. That's crazy. What would you do to save those lives? Like, you wanted to save those 2,000 kids who died of COVID, perhaps involved with COVID, maybe not solely from COVID, not sure. What would you be willing to do? Would you be willing to ban abortion? Would you be willing to do that? Because we're talking about a virus out in the wild going and killing people versus premeditated homicide of the unborn. What would you be willing to do? And you could say, well, we don't think they're human and alive and valuable, at least until like, I don't know, week 21 or something. Okay, that's still like 10,000 babies, more than 2,000. So if it's worth destroying everyone's liberty and bodily autonomy and all that stuff, why is it not worth saying, hey, women don't have a right to kill their children, to rip them apart limb from limb, crush their skulls, inject them with something that induces a heart attack, to cut off the resources so they are deprived of oxygen and nutrients until they wither and die, and then you expel them from your body? How come we're not willing to say we should stop that? So many things with COVID, in my opinion, really took a flashlight or spotlight to different left-wing ideology and just really expose them as not being legit in the least bit. Don't tell me that you care so much about bodily autonomy and it's a top priority when you treated people like garbage during the whole COVID saga. But it's so important when you want to deliberately, electively in the life of a child. It's totally different then. Totally different. Of course. And there's more examples, like people, are like, oh, we need like basic universal income and stuff. What happened when people got them COVID checks? People didn't want to work. It was very hard for people to find jobs, or find workers rather. What happened with healthcare workers? They were forced to get the jab, ruled by the Supreme Court, because they got federal dollars. So because that federal money was attached to where they were employed, basically they're just like, you have a job or you have bodily autonomy, like pick one. So people had to get the jab or lose their job because it was attached to federal dollars. So what will happen if we have universal health care? It kind of seems like someone else becomes in charge of your medical decisions. Maybe they won't interject all the time, but they definitely have the power if they're the ones paying the bill. Especially if they can basically destroy other options and destroy the private healthcare market, which many plans like Medicare for All or whatever will ultimately do. So there's quite a few things in the pandemic that happened that just were like, man, these left-wing policies are awful. And this is a microcosm of all that. A terrible microcosm of all that. So tragic, people who passed away during the pandemic, people who got sick. If you've been following me for a while, you know my dad got really sick. Grace to God that he's still with us today. But I don't understand why it was okay to go all tyrannical, because there was a chance someone might catch it, that you might spread it, someone might catch it and might die. So we needed to shut down everything, even though their solution with the jab wouldn't prevent people from necessarily catching it or spreading it. And they're like, you have to get it. But when we say, hey, we don't think you should purposely kill these people, they're like, how dare you? The math ain't mathin'. So last thing I want to mention before I let you go, we'll get into the immigration stuff, I suppose, tomorrow. I'll have to table that. But I wanted to mention the Tucker Carlson thing with Ben Shapiro. So Ben Shapiro has made some comments about Tucker and some of his commentary regarding different people speaking about October 7th. And Tucker will say things like, there's people dying of fentanyl as they're crossing the border, yet these people are talking about Israel. Like, why don't they care about America? And Ben will be like, people talk about those things. What do you mean? Like, he says this all the time. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. Not the most eloquent sort of sentence, but that's what he keeps repeating. Like, we can talk about what's going over in Israel, and we can talk about the border situation. And Tucker's mentioned it a few times. Ben has mentioned Tucker talking about it a few times now. But over like the holiday, Tucker was being interviewed, and he said some pretty astonishing and vicious and untrue things about Ben. So here's those comments in case you didn't see it.
So I don't really care, but I did think it showed like the level of not just corruption, which I knew, but of like emotional instability and craziness. I mean, there are people, and I stopped reading any of it, but there are people on the right who have spent the last 2 months every single day focused on a conflict in a foreign country as our own country becomes dangerously unstable on the brink of financial collapse, with tens of millions of people who shouldn't be here in the country. We don't know their identities or the purpose of their being here. Like stuff that's could destroy the country for real and make it impossible for my kids to live here. They've said nothing about that, and they're focused with laser intensity on foreign conflicts. And I'm like, at some point, I've got 4 kids. If I'm so caught up in the problems of my neighbor's children and completely ignoring my own children as they get addicted to drugs and kill themselves, I'm not against helping my neighbor's kids, but clearly I don't love my kids. I mean, that's the only logical conclusion. And they don't care about the country at all. And that's kind of their prerogative. But I do, because I have no choice, because I'm from here. My family's been here hundreds of years. I plan to stay here. Like, I'm shocked by how little they care about the country, and including the person you mentioned. And I can't imagine how someone like that could get an audience of people who claim to care about America, because he doesn't, obviously. Right?
Right. Well, I mean, Tucker, we've seen it too on free speech. I mean, people who become multimillionaires, who've made entire careers, who've literally became famous, on this very reason. I know you've spoken about this previously, but it's very important to our audience as well. Is that standing up for free speech rights of people you disagree with is probably the most important exercise, and we've seen some of that come for American citizens on Palestine. How do you work through this too when we're both under such immense pressure, even social pressure, of like, how could you support this? Take maybe the context of the university presidents. We've got billionaires like Bill Ackman, I'm curious what you make of this. My assessment is they're upset that.
Oh, I don't have the rest of the question for that clip, but he was talking about Ben. Ben was a person that was mentioned in the clip. So I watch Ben frequently. I won't say every day, but it's practically every day I watch his show. And I look at his feed. There's different feeds that I look through basically like every day. I'm chronically online, I guess, to just kind of for myself, see what different people are saying about the news and different stuff going on and et cetera, and weighing in. Ben talks about the border. Ben talks about the spending. He talks about the election. He talks about the courts and how Donald Trump is being treated, though he prefers DeSantis. He talks about topical things, entertainment things. It's all sorts of things that are going on. So to pretend like these important things that Tucker are talking about that really impact the country, as if he's not talking about it or other people's not talking about it. So he's not only talking about Ben, but he's talking about, like, I don't understand how he could attract an audience, because this person clearly doesn't care about the country, but all these people are watching him. Apparently you don't watch him enough, or you're just being blatantly dishonest about what's going on. And what's interesting about Tucker here saying all this stuff, does he devote his full time to this? He's been in other countries talking about stuff going on in other countries. He's interviewed Kevin Spacey, which in a creepy, weird sort of interview during Christmas, where Kevin Spacey was, doing it as if he was President Underwood from the show House of Cards, which he got canned from that because he had accusations of inappropriate behavior, and he had like 4 accusers and 3 of them died or something. So but when he got like first outed about it, when accusations started coming out, he was like, I'm gay. It was so weird. It was so weird. So Tucker had him on. He's had Andrew Tate on. Didn't push back about Andrew Tate's case. People like went through his interview. People went through Candace Owens' interview because she didn't really push back on Tate and was like, here's stuff he said about basically pimping out women. Here's what's actually in the court cases. Tate is lying here. Tate is lying here. Here's some evidence here, etc. So Tucker, to me, has lost a lot of his journalistic curiosity, or is just choosing not to apply it. He had the guy on who claimed to have slept with Obama. And we talked about that on the show after the interview, and I watched the whole thing. I went back and watched like old interviews with the guy. And I didn't say it was like totally outside the realm of possibility, but Tucker didn't like push back on the conversation really at all. He mentioned in his intro that the man even took a lie detector test, but he didn't mention that he failed the lie detector test. So it was like he mentioned it to lend credibility to him, but didn't give the information that he failed the test. I'm not saying that people can't fail a test and still be telling the truth, but that's information that he didn't give to the audience but he's the one who brought up the test. So he's had all kinds of interviews with different people and has not been 100% nonstop, only focused on the border and the fentanyl coming in, etc. That's not true. And then he when Candace was on talking about the Ben Shapiro drama, they mentioned COVID and stuff. and he's talked about that a bit, complaining about folks. But people were like, you had Trump on and you gave a softball interview to him. I watched, it was pretty boring. And he didn't like grill him on his decisions that he made during COVID. So I'm pretty disappointed with Tucker. I had a little conversation, and we saw each other again recently because he came to be the main speaker at an event that I pushed, that I made, ads and stuff for. But I'm disappointed because I don't know how you have this take and have it honestly. Because you're either talking out of ignorance, which he has a very powerful platform. So why are you saying these things? But to me, it seems like it's more plotted and malicious. And I don't, people speculate because Tucker himself is a bit of a character. Like he's talked about, people showed past clips of him talking about Bill O'Reilly basically being a character that's playing to an audience, and people suspect that Tucker is doing a similar sort of thing. And that some people think that he's just like farming for content, like creating drama to get himself more attention or whatever. People have said like Tucker doesn't have the same kind of audience that he had before. Like you say, oh, but so many people are watching him online on Twitter. It doesn't translate quite the same. But like people from Fox who might have loved Tucker, maybe some people follow him over, maybe some people left Fox. But a lot of people watching cable TV, they're not cord cutters and they're still watching Fox News, I don't think my dad cares who's on at 8 o'clock. Fox, I don't think he cares. He just has it on the channel. Like his TV recently died, which he wasn't happy because the Michigan Rose Bowl game came on, so he had to watch that in his room the other day. But the TV wasn't that old, but the TV that he had before had a Fox News emblem like burned into the screen just from how much it was on the channel. So you turn off the channel and it was still, you change the channel, it still like had the Fox News logo in the corner. That's how much he watched that channel. So I don't know what his ultimate agenda here is, coming for Ben and saying those things about Ben, but to claim he's not that he hates America and he hates his country because he doesn't devote sufficient enough time to the topics that you say need to be devoted to, when the truth is that he talks about these things, many things that are impacting our country. It's just dishonest. It's not, I think it's more than an ignorance thing. I think it's blatantly him being dishonest and maliciously saying this thing about Ben and slandering his character. And there's people who gropers or whoever who are elevating it and like, oh, he's coming for Ben, oh, he's talking smack about Ben, oh, he's going after him, and etc., blah, telling him off or whatever. But it's not true. What he's saying isn't true. So I don't appreciate it. Ben did not say anything about it today on a show. I'm sure he's aware of it. I don't know why he chose not to address it. Perhaps he didn't want to, breathe more oxygen into it. If that's what Tucker's plot is, or if he's going to do that behind a paywall, which more power to you, no shame in your game. But he didn't say anything about it on a show. And if he didn't say anything about it today, I don't know if he's going to say anything about it tomorrow. He might have said something behind the paywall. I don't know. I just watched the portion of today that was in front of the paywall. But I haven't seen him tweet about it. So perhaps he's just going to ignore it. But he has made statements about Tucker and his insistence that people are doing something wrong, talking about the Israel situation and not focusing enough on the border, when the truth is that I don't know any influencer on the right who hasn't mentioned anything about the border and how bad it is. And it's crazy. It's crazy bad. No, people are definitely talking about it. People are talking about fentanyl and other stuff. But I think Israel, it's still obviously an important thing to talk about, especially as new information and stuff pops up. It was a horrific thing that happened. There's a lot of worldwide repercussions that could happen. So it's interesting still to talk about. And then there's like this whole kind of moral underlining thing where people inject their racial sort of identities or whatever into it, that I guess requires commentary, and is one of the reasons why I find it necessary and fascinating to talk about. Because, and I've said this many times, people tell me, you're a brown person, you need to be on the side of brown people, and they don't expect me to weigh the atrocities of what happened. They just expect me to pick a brown side and not side with the people who they see as white. And so it goes back to that, DEI, critical race theory, sort of oppression Olympics sort of stuff that is really destructive toward our country, which is stuff that everybody talks about all the time. So it's worth still mentioning. Absolutely. And then let's be for real, he's Jewish. He's Jewish. He I don't think he wasn't there at the time of the attack, but I think he was there not too long before that happened. He knows people who, who have been affected by that. And then you turn around and you see all these people who are deeply anti-Semitic tearing down. People have shown themselves to be so terrible, tearing down posters and chanting for the destruction of Israel, and sticking Palestinian flags on top of menorahs, and all kinds of different stuff. It goes way beyond just what happened on October the 7th. There's some deeper moral rot to talk about. So I don't appreciate Tucker. There was a time where I stopped watching him religiously because he had a particular shtick, and it kind of got old after a while. Like, oh, he invites some crazy leftist on, he asks some questions, they look really stupid, he makes his Tucker face. It was fun to laugh at a couple times at first, but eventually, it wasn't my thing anymore. But he's really nice in person though. But I don't, whatever game this is with Ben, I don't appreciate it. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. We'll talk about the immigration, I guess my segment on that tomorrow. Spoiler alert though, CBS reported that was like 300,000 crossings in December. That's like half the population of Detroit. There's so many people who've come here illegally, and think about how many people who we don't know came and are bringing over all sorts of things, or we don't know who they are. They could be criminals and all kinds of terrorists or whatever. It's just a mess. It's just really a mess. So I want to devote some more time to it. So we'll touch on that tomorrow. But thank you guys for joining me. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost to stream on my website, all this stuff. Please check out different merch that I have, different t-shirts and mugs and so on. And I do have different books you guys can find out more. If you go to the merchandise page, there's a banner, it'll take you to my book website. So check out the stuff that I have. Please consider joining the email list. Again, I sent out an email that did a little bit of the year in review, and I talked about some of the top articles that I had and so on. So thank you guys for kicking off the new year with me. And let's do it again. let's hit that 100K on like YouTube and stuff, and keep growing together. So God bless. See you tomorrow.